Welcome to our inaugural Chicago in Focus for the 2023-2024 year. My name is Jane Ruby, and I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Chicago. And thank you to everyone who can make it in person and also to our viewers who are online. This event series is about Chicago's migrant crisis. I'll just go ahead and do two short introductions before we get started. So first, to introduce our partner organization, the Union League Club. Since its founding more than 140 years ago, the Union League Club has asked its members to uphold its commitment to community, country, and culture through philanthropic work that honors the past, serves the present, and works to ensure the future. The work of our members, or the work of their members, from a civic and philanthropic perspective, and it's an important work. If this sounds like something you would want to be a part of, feel free to approach the people in the back to get information about the Union League Club. Their commitment is always growing and looking for others to join their cause. And to introduce my organization, the League of Women Voters of Chicago. The League of Women Voters of Chicago is a nonpartisan grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights and ensure everyone is represented in our democracy. We empower voters and defend democracy through advocacy and education. Formed from the movement that secured the right to vote for women, the centerpiece of the League's efforts remains to expand political participation and give a voice to all Americans. LWV Chicago has been at the forefront of the fight to recognize the important contributions of the many women whose efforts have helped make our city fairer, freer, and more just. The League's multi-year effort to honor the legacy of Ida B. Wells, for example, culminated in 2019 with the renaming of Congress Parkway to Ida B. Wells Drive. In December 2020, League of Women Voters of Chicago celebrated its centennial, a momentous milestone for our organization and an opportunity to celebrate the achievements of recent years as well as a century-long legacy. Yet while we have had a lot to celebrate, the centennial also threw into stark relief the work still to be done. LWV Chicago continues to pursue its goals through a range of voter service activities, including voter registration drives, disseminating information for voters, participating in poll watching, and hosting candidate debates and forums, through education of its members and public to lobbying the government on select issues, and through observation of the functioning of governmental bodies to monitor their accountability and transparency. In the past few years, LWV Chicago has worked on some inspiring projects, including the passing of legislation turning Cook County Jail into a polling site. Our democracy remains a work in progress. Even if it takes another century, the League will see it through. And on that note, I'll pass it over to Deborah Halpern, who will introduce our speakers. Thank you so much, everybody.
Hello, and thank you everybody that survived the traffic to get here, the lines to get up the elevator, and everything else. So we're very, very pleased to have you. And I am particularly pleased to introduce our speakers. So I'd first like to introduce you to Johannes Favi, and he is the Deputy Director of the Illinois Community for Displaced Immigrants. He is a community and human rights activist who received the 2021 Jean and Joseph Sullivan Human Rights Award from the National Immigrant Justice Center. Johannes spent over 10 months in the custody of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, better known as ICE, in horrible conditions. He is an immigrant from Benin in West Africa. And his organization provides transit assistance, housing with wraparound care as asylum seekers and advocates for justice for immigrants at the local, state, and national level. And we thank you for being here. And our first speaker will be Alisa Bhachu. She is also a newlywed. We're all getting used to it. Congratulations, Alisa. Over the course of her 20-year career in human rights and international development, Alisa Bhachu has specialized in gender equity and forced migration. From 2012 to 2018, she led Refugee, an award-winning NGO based in Nairobi, Kenya. She also directed Amnesty International's national campaigns of refugees and asylum, and currently serves as the CEO of the Chicago Refugee Coalition. And her leadership has been honored as an international leader by Chicago Women magazine and named an emerging leader by the Chicago Council of Global Affairs. And we are truly fortunate to have both of them here. So I thank you both for coming. And Alisa, this is yours.
Good evening, everyone. I'm really thrilled to be here with you all at my first event ever with the League of Women Voters, but even more so as a member. Thanks so much, Debbie, for the invitation and for the opportunity to be here with you all this evening. So my organization is Chicago Refugee Coalition. We were founded in 2018 to meet the critical care needs of Chicago's refugee population. So we operate a resource center out of Sullivan High School in Rogers Park, affectionately known as Refugee High. And we operate a food banking program. I'll be sharing more about that with you. But our goal is to really pick up where traditional resettlement agencies leave off. So when refugees arrive here, they receive 90 days of federal assistance, and then it's up to the broader community to welcome and integrate them. So we play a critical role in the long-term support of Chicago's refugees. So our food security program, since we were founded, we've distributed over 120,000 meals through corporate partnerships. And what that has enabled refugees' families to do is to free up their basic income and give them economic agency for the things that they really need. And we serve about 800 refugees a week. And as I mentioned too, we operate a refugee resource center out of Sullivan High School. And it's this beautiful space. I don't know if you're familiar with Sullivan High School, but it's called Refugee High. There was a book that was published about it, and the enrollment of kids there, over 80% are refugees and immigrants. So there's a really special and deep focus in service and supports for kids at that school. So why are we here tonight? We are here to talk about Chicago's migrant crisis. And as Johannes and I were talking about what is most critical for us to start as sort of a jumping off point in this discussion is talking about what the definitions and having a language for talking about what this crisis represents. So right now, there are more than 100 million people forcibly displaced around the world. And as Chicagoans, every day we're seeing headlines, right, about what's happening in our city and the migrants that are arriving. But what we're seeing is that the terms are being used interchangeably frequently. So you'll hear migrants, refugees, new arrivals, all kinds of different terms for talking about individuals who have come here. And is there a really important distinct difference between the two, and does it matter? And I would say, yes, there is a very important difference, and it does matter. The two terms, migrant and refugee, have different meanings, and confusing them leads to problems for both populations, and here's why. So countries deal with migrants under their own immigration law and processes. Countries deal with refugees through norms of refugee protection and asylum that are defined in both national legislation and international law. Countries have specific responsibilities toward refugees. And agencies like the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and IOM help countries deal with asylum and their protection responsibilities. So who is a refugee? A refugee is a person who is fleeing political or armed conflict. There are 35 million refugees worldwide, And their situation is often so perilous and intolerable that they cross national borders to seek safety in their nearby communities. And by doing so, they are given the term and designation of refugee because it's an international form of protection. Refugees go through intensive vetting. They go through years of waiting on their asylum claims. And these are people for whom the denial of asylum has potentially deadly consequences. Refugees are defined and protected through international law. The 1951 Refugee Convention and 67 Protocol are the cornerstones of modern refugee protection. The 51 Convention defines who a refugee is based on 5 criterion. Someone who's unable or unwilling to return to their country of origin based on a well-founded fear of persecution for race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group, or political opinion. So the 1951 Convention, it outlines the basic rights which states afford to refugees. And one of the most fundamental principles laid out is one that is called refoulement. And that is the binding obligation that all countries who resettle have to not return a refugee back to its country and put themselves at the risk of harm again. So the last term that we'll talk about that's important in this conversation is who is an asylum seeker. An asylum seeker is an individual who is seeking international protection. So in countries with individualized procedures of supporting refugees, an asylum seeker is someone whose claim has not yet been processed and finally decided upon. So not every asylum seeker will ultimately be recognized as a refugee, but every recognized refugee is initially an asylum seeker. And most importantly for our conversation here tonight is who is a migrant? There is no internationally accepted legal definition of who a migrant is. But nevertheless, they could be in danger if they returned home. And it's important to understand that just because migrants do not necessarily flee the same kinds of persecution, they very well might. And every individual asylum seeker's case is based on their unique story. We'll be talking about migrants from Venezuela. Over 200,000 Venezuelans have been granted refugee status. So this is an important component of the conversation about migrants and what the situation that we're facing in Chicago entails. Migrants are still entitled to have their human rights protected and respected, regardless of the status that they have when they arrive in the country that they arrive in. And migrants, for the most part, choose to move not because of a direct fear of persecution or death per se, though they might, but mainly to improve their lives by finding work, in some cases, education, family reunion, and other reasons. So what is the context of the migrant crisis here in Chicago now? And I only have a couple minutes to discuss this, so forgive me if I'm simplifying it too much. But what's important is to understand that the majority of the new arrivals here are Venezuelan. And the number of refugees and migrants from Venezuela has surpassed 7 million globally, making this the second largest external displacement crisis in the world. A significant number of these Venezuelans are in need of international protection. In Venezuela, decades of government mismanagement have created economic, political, and humanitarian crisis with reduced quality of life, similar to those who experienced countries affected by war or violence. It's estimated that within Venezuela, approximately 25% of the population requires humanitarian assistance. A couple of months back, I was listening to a PBS interview with a woman named Cynthia Arnson of the Wilson Center. And she was saying, life is very difficult. The poverty rate in Venezuela is 95%. 75% live in extreme poverty. There's shortages of food, drinking water, medicine. Inflation last year was at 700% in Venezuela. So this is why people are risking their lives to cross the border to seek asylum in the United States and other countries. Children and adolescents make up 25% of those who have fled Venezuela, with girls and young women among the most vulnerable. Also, the think tank, the Brookings Institution, has estimated that this crisis is one of the current most underfunded refugee crises in modern history. So the background in a quick snapshot, I'm so glad that Johannes is here to share on the ground what's happening in the shelters and what the community response looks like more broadly, is that we have 15,000 new arrivals since August of last year. When this crisis began, it was primarily local aid organizations, small NGOs, local nonprofits, grassroots organizations, faith-based communities, activist groups that came together to provide aid, because there was no federal or state funding for this issue until almost a year later. There have been 22 shelters set up across the city, which is pretty extraordinary, I have to say, and are currently being managed. Johannes's organization is one of those. He'll be sharing about that. And then just, you know, a quick snapshot of a very recent statistic is that 30 buses arrived since May 9th of this year, and 9 buses arrived just the week of June 16 to 24. So, you know, what we're looking at is a crisis that is going to be moving forward and progressing for some time. So there is a sustained need for Chicagoan support around this issue. Also, in terms of the current situation, the city has 11,500 individuals in the shelter system itself, and approximately 2,000 new arrivals are still residing at 19 on the police station floors of 19 police stations across our city. And many, if you've seen any of these individuals staying there and camping out outside there, it is families and it's children and it's young mothers and youth that just have such significant need. The shelters are at max capacity, and by the end of 2023, the city will have spent over $255 million in direct services and support to try to step in and aid during this crisis. So what are some of the solutions that we're hearing? I'm sure you've read about it in the press and media, but our mayor is proposing tent camps. And these tents are being modeled after ones that have been set up in New York City. They're also being referred to as winterized base camps. They are military grade tents that would supposedly be climate controlled with bathrooms and showers, intake spaces and facility areas. Today also there was an announcement that the city has entered into a contract with a security agency for $29 million to set up these tents. So we know for a fact that it's not a proposal, it's moving forward, and it's going to be happening, mostly in locations across the city that are undesignated as of yet, but abandoned malls, large parking lots, abandoned schools and areas like that. So where we are at this moment is just realizing that there is a tremendous crisis within our own backyard, and it's a real opportunity for groups like this and individuals to be looking at and resourcing and supporting organizations providing direct service. So my organization, the Chicago Refugee Coalition, what we've done is that since last summer, We partnered with different agencies and organizations like Lurie's Children's Hospital. We run an Amazon migrant wish list so people can just immediately be purchasing the inflatable mattresses and boots and winter wear and things that these newly arrived migrants need. And we've distributed over $50,000 of new goods through that program. We also host and organize community raising and awareness events because we believe in the power of face-to-face connection to transform people's hearts and minds. So we hosted Day of Dignity last month. Over 700 refugees, migrants came out, received over $200,000 worth of goods and supplies. The mayor came, he made an appearance. He was very kind and generous with his time. And then we also are hosting an event on September 29th called Welcoming Little Amal. So this is, she is this beautiful 12-foot puppet who is a Syrian refugee who's aged, she's 10 years of age. So she comes along with a curriculum and a whole sort of entourage and a lot of press and media to educate primarily youth and young children around the global refugee crisis. So we're hosting an event at Jordan Community School, and you all are more than welcome, but you will definitely be hearing about this campaign coming to Chicago the end of this month. So that sums it up for the presentation on my end, and I'd like to thank you again for having me here and introduce my friend and colleague, Johannes.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Johannes Favi. I'm Deputy Director with the Illinois Community for Displaced Immigrants. And I'm also Freedom Fellow with Detention Watch Network in Washington, D.C. My experience in immigration detention, like Debbie said earlier, gave me firsthand experience to know what the people that are arriving to our city are facing. And I've been guiding a team of 10 people to serve and provide direct service to the newly arrived migrant. So our organization, ICDI, the Illinois Community for Displaced Immigrants, have 3 main programs. The first one is called the Essential. So our Essential program used to be called CITA, Chicago Immigrant Transit Assistant. And we provide to the newly arrived migrants food, clothes, their immediate needs. Sometimes they don't have lace, shoelace, or belt because the government take those away when they get to be in CBP custody. And our volunteers are trained to identify them. And we have been doing this way before Operation Lone Star started in Chicago, in DC, and in New York. We have been serving this population at the Greyhound station for many years. So once we give them this immediate item, they have to go to New York. If they have to go to New York, then sometimes we get them a bus ticket, we help them. If they decide to stay in Chicago, then we refer them to our housing program. And ICDI housing program is a pretty small one, but it's a model that I would like to share with you so you have an idea of our work. We currently have several families in our program, and we have something called a community-based program. We rely strongly on community organization like church, group of people that can commit the time or that have an extra building to give us to house this family. And once we house them, we then rely also on something called our mentors. So we find some mentors in the community that are willing to guide these people, teach them how to ride on the bus, teach them how to learn English, right? So they can start doing something with the time rather than staying idle. So in our housing program, then our third program kick in. And this is called the case management program. So our case manager at ICDI help the newly arrived migrants have access to the different resources available in Chicago, in Illinois. And we actually have a resource guide that you can find on our website that you can download and share with people that might need it. And our case manager help people apply for health benefits, everything from food stamp, cash assistance to enrolling the children to school. And recently we had a partnership with Uber, and we have been also helping people have a ride from point A to point B to the important appointment, medical appointments, ICE checking, and etc. Additionally to what we have been doing originally, ICDI have been helping the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois since the first bus arrived to Chicago, because we are very familiar with this type of population. And then I had the opportunity to work with Alisa several times to help this newly arrived individual by giving them different items from, diapers to clothes to baby milk and winter boot or jacket. So we also have a wish list that you can find on our website. We also have a wish list that you can find on our website in case you know anyone that could support our work and help us continue our mission. So ICDI have been assigned to a shelter that is actually 4-minute walking distance from here, that have about 1,200 people. And we have 3 case managers that have been working there to provide the same type of care to the newly arrived migrants by following up with them on a daily basis, by helping them have access to this critical resource available for them in the state of Illinois. So we also have been working with the 12th District Police Station and the 18th District Police Station, where some of you might have seen migrants setting up tents in the street because they have nowhere to go. So that's about what ICDI is doing in the community. And I will be happy to answer any question that you might have. Thank you.
The question was, where can people find the wish lists for the different organizations? And we'll be posting that, and we'll post it in sort of the follow-up article as well, so our members and people watching the webinar will have access to these wish lists. But they're also on their websites.
Yes, if you go to both of our websites, there are the drop-down menus under Take Action or Get Involved, something like that. And then it will populate the Amazon wish list click-through. And you click there and it will just take you to Amazon with the complete listing of things that are most recently requested and needed. Repeat the question.
Yeah.
Okay, her question was what kind of policy we would like to see? And my answer would be, we would like for the people arriving to have access to work. Most of them left the country not because they wanted to, they left the country because the situation was very bad. And coming in the US, turning themselves into CBP, and CBP releasing them to the states without giving them a right to work is not right. So we would like for our policymaker to advocate to speed up the process so they can have access to work permits, just like other population. The Ukrainian have been granted a much shorter term than the population that we are serving today, who have to wait 10 months before they can even provide for themselves. There is a bill currently.
Who's working on that now?
Well, community organizations have been pushing for this to happen. And a couple of months ago, there was a bill that was introduced in Congress that we will be sharing as well with everyone. So you can support and push for work permits to pass.
And also here locally in Chicago, there's another coalition called RAN, Refugee Action Network. And they are the group that are focused more on policy and advocacy side of immigration and refugees in Chicago.
That's a great point.
Do you want to sum that one up?
Would you like to summarize?
No, go ahead.
Your point. If I can be shorter than you, you are saying the same issue that we just brought up have been affecting our communities for decades, and no one is addressing them. And on that, part of my work as a Freedom Fellow with Detention Watch Network in Washington, D.C. is to advocate and also sometimes to protest, right, for our rights. So we have campaigns that target our policymaker. We call them, we go to the office, we meet them, and we share our experience on the ground with them and invite them to do something about it. So it's a long shot, and we all have to be involved at some point. We all have to gather group communities, together to go there. You have to go there, knock at the door. You are my representative, and I want you to do something about my community. So it have to be a collective effort. That would be my stake on that, and I'll pass it on to Alisa.
Thanks. I would just echo what Johannes is saying. And I think that I appreciate your question about the tension that exists within our own community of parts of our city that have been systemically under-resourced for decades. And the fact that significant funds are being allocated now toward these relief efforts. And there is deep tension. And I would say, I know that there were a few community dialogues that were set up and established initially when this issue started to really gain a lot of heat. And there would be people who would lay themselves down in front of the buses, not wanting them to enter their own communities and to find, shelter in a particular neighborhood. So there's a tremendous amount of public discourse and dialogue that needs to occur within our own community that I think we all could be advocating more for as well. That's it. So
Please repeat both of those questions.
I will. And then do you want to take the first one? I'll take the second one. Okay, so her question was, what are the distinctions on the path of citizenship for refugees, migrants, and asylum seekers? And also, what is available at Sullivan High School in terms of volunteer opportunities through the Chicago Refugee Coalition?
First, I have to disclose I'm not an immigration attorney, but I will answer based on what I know. Yes, immigration is a complex area. Someone that come to the US that go apply for asylum on the same application, you have something else that is called Convention Against Torture, right? So depending on how you apply on that same document, you are applying for different benefits, and depending on what you'll be receiving, you will have a specific path to have your citizenship. So your path will be totally different from someone that is petitioning to become a citizen through a relative, or they have a child that is sponsoring them or a spouse that is sponsoring them. So in the same way, a migrant that first arrive in a country does not qualify for certain application because of how they enter the country. So it's a very complex area. And again, I'm not an immigration attorney. I'm sharing with you my knowledge about the topic. Thank you.
Thanks. And I would just say for volunteer opportunities through the coalition, if you go to our website, there's a drop-down button that says Get Involved. And we manage a resource center there that is staffed through volunteers and our staff. So everything from distributing of goods. People can make appointments to come and shop and take what they need. So we set volunteers up with opportunities like that. We have a lot of events that we plan throughout the year, the gala, the Days of Dignity, the different tours, the things coming through that are awareness raising, community building events. There's opportunities to get involved in that way as well. So check out our website. There's a drop down page and then, or just, I'll give you my email after this and we can be in touch.
The question is, there is a lack of immigration lawyers helping the new arrival. So I will keep it that short, right? Okay, so the reason why we are saying this is because in immigration, the law works very differently from in a regular justice system. Let's say when you commit a crime and you go to jail, you can have a public defender in a regular justice system. But in immigration, you are guilty before proving your innocence. From being on the US soil, you have already committed a crime, right? So you are fighting your removal. Now, a lot of immigration attorney, not that they don't want to take the case, but they have to wait. If they have 90% of chance to win the case, because fleeing your country, unfortunately, for an economic reason, is not a valid claim for you to apply for asylum in the US, under the US law. So most of the people that are coming should be granted something called TPS, temporary protected status. But asylum is not really something that they might qualify for. Some of them might, but you have to be on an individual basis. So now an attorney work for a living, right? You went to school, you have student loan to pay, like all of us. So a lot of them would not like to take a case that will last 4 years. An asylum case can last up to 4 years, right? And not get nothing in return. And now commit that time to go to court, study the law book, and then defend the client to get nothing for 4 years. It makes sense that the system is also rigged against them, and that we having a shortage of immigration lawyers. Thank you. The question is if there is anything our state and city could do to help alleviate the situation regarding work permit and the migrant arriving into our cities. And my answer will be they have to continue to advocate on a federal level. They have to call out the Biden administration consistently and make sure that he delivered the promises that he made to the people that elected him to be our president.
Yes, and I would also say that our collective voice to challenge the decision to set up tent camps across our city, where we have winters in January and February that have double-digit negative winter weather. I don't see how it's going to be feasible to house families in tents outside in the middle of a Chicago winter. So I think that the feasibility of the concept should be something that is a very rigorous discourse now. That would be my words for the mayor. There is a subcommittee on immigration and refugee policy amongst the Illinois Congress people. Aldermen are also set up, and they're having weekly calls trying to figure things out. But what the appeal has been is the mayor asking the different alder people to designate specific sites within their jurisdiction and offer those up as potential shelter locations. And there's been significant lack of movement forward in those ways. So I would say the feasibility of setting up large tent camps across the city should be something that should be a priority for us in this moment.
Isn't there a discussion of possibly doing like vacant buildings and stuff and turning those in? I think that some of the aldermen were discussing that. Do you see that as more of a feasible thing?
Well, there's the current 22 shelters, right, that are at capacity. So it's sort of a...
What's the question?
Hi, I was just saying as a continuation is there's been talks of also possibly like the city buying up vacant buildings and turning those instead of doing sort of a winterized base camp systems of moving them into sort of more permanent complexes that are existing as vacant now and turning those into sort of more shelters, I guess you would say.
Do you want to speak to?
I would like to say something about it. I think I will invite our mayor also to learn from the city of New York, not only from the mayor office, but to go on the ground and to speak to other people that have been working like us, a non-profit organization, mutual aid that have been helping on the ground to hear from them firsthand how the tents were a failure in New York. Before even bringing that up to Chicago. That will be all I would say on that topic.
Yeah, there's one question online, and it is, could you walk us through sort of what it's like when they first sort of arrive, like a little bit more of the process, and then where you end up placing them, like how that system works?
I wanted to make sure this is about the organization that I serve and not also only about the city of Chicago. So I'm going to speak for our organization. When people arrive to the ground station, we try to see if you have spot available in our housing program to refer them. And if we don't, per city recommendation, we have to call 311 or have them pick up by the city bus to send them to a shelter. And the city can take it on from there.
And also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that migrants arrive on the buses, they're sent to walk to the local police stations. Then they reside at the police stations for however long it is until they're able to be placed in a shelter. Is that correct? Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay.
The question is, are all these migrants registered when they cross the border to come to the US? I say yes, 100% of the ones that are coming right now are fingerprinted and often detained with CBP before they get into shelter in Texas and bused by Governor Abbott to our cities. The question is, where exactly do they come from? New York, Texas, and if we get a heads up before the migrant come to Chicago? And the answer is yes, because we have been doing this for many years. We build our relationship with other folks like us in different states. We have been tracking the bus coming from Tennessee for many years. And we have been in communication with other NGOs telling us, hey, I gave all these people red bag today. Look out for the red bag, right? Hey, today was only one person and he looked like this. And, there was some level of communication that we have built over the years. And also, today, there is a level of communication between the entities sending bus from Texas to Chicago and with our city, which is helping the city to prepare better, to have OMC, right on site before the bus come. OMC is the Office of Emergency Management at the city of Chicago, and they have been helping the city during this response. So the city is better prepared than when it happened a year ago. Now, your other question, if they're coming from New York or Texas, I would say from everywhere. People come every day at the ground station from New York, from Washington, D.C., sometime from Brownsville in Texas. Volunteer or go, people just buy them the ticket. If they miss the Operation Lone Star bus, individual that can afford it, get them on the ticket, with the family and send them up north, and they end up being in the station and sometimes for days. So if my volunteer are not scheduled on that time, then they'll be sleeping there and the Greyhound station build also a relationship with our volunteer to tell them, hey, we need your help. We don't speak Spanish. There's a family here that needs your support, and we have been coordinating like that. So the question is, does our organization advocate for, a different way to shelter the new arrival? And yes, we have been doing that. And also, yes, Catholic Charity have been involved, very heavily, helping the city put people into housing. But it is, again, and it have to be a community work. We all have to work together, because it is not a problem that a city on its own budget can resolve, or a state. It have to be a federal response. We have to make sure these people can provide for themselves, rather than trying to put a band-aid. Millions of dollars have been into trying to resolve this issue, and those millions of dollars could have helped them have access to work, to let them take care of themselves, and also increase our economy. So the question is, should organization like us be the go-to for the migrants that are, at a red light, begging, anywhere else in the city? And I would say yes, but we don't have the resource, just like the city. We are trying to do our best with thin air. Our organization is completely on private donors. People giving 25 to 150, and it's been just recently that we had access to a little bit of funding, and it's almost impossible to hire staff to do this kind of work, and also to do mutual aid and to give cash, unless the federal government step in to decide to help the state with enough funding.
I think to the question itself of the needs that are presenting us on the street corners or at the different exits, right? You see a lot of families with signs at the exits. And I would say, from my personal perspective, there's an ethical and a moral responsibility to be providing and supporting and caring in the ways that we can. Having a simple conversation with them to say, have you availed yourself? Have you talked with the case manager? What's your story? Where are you from? Have you been connected? Just maybe starting with a simple conversation in that way, and then referring them on to any of the other agencies that are doing this work in either, assessing the needs at the bus stations, to the newly arrived people, to the different law enforcement. Chicago police are navigating a very complex landscape at the 19 police stations that they're managing right now. So I would encourage people, if you have the time and the bandwidth to actually have a conversation with those individuals, that might be a good place to start.
Great. Well, thank you so much to both of our speakers for taking time out of their busy schedules. This is a really important issue that we all should be paying attention to. And I know definitely League of Women Voters of Chicago is looking forward to sort of continuing these conversations with your organizations to get information out not only to our members, but also to the larger public about how important this issue is and ways for people to get involved. I will make sure that links to the wish list for both these groups are made available. And also links to sort of their other ways you can get involved will also be made available. And I will also just like to take a moment to thank everyone both in person and watching virtually for joining us this evening. It's programs like this that, the League is more than happy to provide, not just to our members, but to the general public. And I'm glad that we can also have this hybrid option for folks at home and to also have this recording to be able to share. So I hope everyone shares this information with your friends and family. It's a really important issue. And also, the League of Women Voters is also a nonprofit organization, and to keep our work going so we can offer programming like this. You know, it's made possible by members and people who care about our programs too. So, you know, we would love it if you could also consider our organization for donations so we can continue this educational service and make sure that we can have speakers come in and talk about these issues. So thank you so much to everyone. And I'm sure the speakers will be here for, you know, a few minutes after if there's any follow-ups that anyone wants to discuss. So thank you so much.